Alright guys, I have a 30-minute unrated game against the player rated around 731 at Rapid. And so this is going to be part of the How to Beat a 700 rated player series. So that they're playing with the white pieces, I'm black. They started with d4, I've replied with d5, and now we have bishop to f4. So I'm anticipating the London. And this is not my normal response, but I like to mix things up a little bit. I'll play my knight out. So now I'm kind of outside of my normal repertoire. So yeah, they're playing the London, which makes a lot of sense. Very, very good opening for beginners. I'll drop my bishop back to here. If takes, I'll recapture with h. Giving myself a semi-open file. Okay, good principled play so far from white. I'm inclined to bring my knight out now. I can't play e5 because I've got 1, 2, 3 attackers and only one defender. So I could play e6 now. I think that would be workable. My dark square bishop can now come out. My knight has got a natural square on f6. Okay, good play so far. I'm going to put my bishop there. And if white wants to swap off, they can do. Okay, so now if I capture on f4, white can only recapture with a pawn. But I don't think that really benefits me too much. Now I'm just looking at the attackers and the defenders on this e5 square. It's got 1, 2, 3 attackers. So if I move my pawn there, I've still only got 1, 2 defenders, and that's not enough. So I could think about pushing f6 to prepare e5. And let me put my queen there first. If I do push f6, then my knight's got fewer options as well. I'm just considering this as a move. Oh, hang on. Undefended bishop on d3. How long's that been there? Oh yeah, so with this pawn push, right, never proceed with what you're doing before you've checked out what your opponent just did. Right, it's absolutely critical. What my opponent just did was push the pawn from c2 to c3. That pawn was defending this bishop, and now it no longer is defending the bishop. So what white has just done is undefended his own piece. So what he should have done is picked up the pawn, hovered it over that where he intends to put it, and then look at the board and think, is there anything wrong with this move that I'm planning? All right. So now I'm a piece up. Could retreat my bishop back to there, but the bishop's not in particular danger right now, I don't think. At least here it's looking at this knight. I think that would be a waste of a move at this point though. Now if I castle long and we have bishop takes, I can recapture with a queen, so that's safe enough. I also want to think about bringing my knight out. Castling seems to make sense at this point, so I'll go ahead and do that. I can also recapture now with a rook. Okay. I'm going to recapture with a queen though. So you can see here, I'm holding the queen there and now I'm looking at the board. I'm looking to see what are white's options, what could happen here. Is there anything undefended? Is there anything that could easily be attacked? I don't think there is, so I'll drop the piece. I'm aware that white has actually, so I got this off Open Challenges on chess.com, and so white created the challenge for a 30-minute rapid game and has practically finished development inside the first minute. Now I've got a couple of options here. I could capture with the pawn, I could capture with the bishop, or I could do nothing at all, or I could move my bishop somewhere else. So bishop, like even down to a6, might be useful later on in the game. Long range piece, so it might be able to support something there. But I'm kind of inclined to break open the middle. I don't think I want this pawn to advance. I think this strong pawn chain would be problematic. So I'm inclined to capture, probably with the pawn. I'll capture with the pawn. Let's say knight takes. I can recapture with the bishop if I want to. But I think that bishop's looking quite healthy. Now if knight takes, it's going to be looking at my queen, you see. So I'll be forced either to move the queen or capture with the bishop. I'm still a piece up as things stand. So let's say pawn takes, knight takes, retreat queen. That looks alright. I'm happy with that. Oh, no, I'm going to have to recapture with the bishop, because if knight takes, yeah, you can see, discovered attack by the queen, so let's do that. Rook will recapture, and now I think it's simply time to bring my knight out to f6. So it's now 2 knights against 1, and the E file has opened up quite nicely now. So there are no completely open files. We have 2 semi-open files on the board, D and E. We each have 7 pawns. So this is like one of those moments in the game where you have to stop and reevaluate. So let's take the pulse of what's going on the board. We have semi-open files, semi-open there for white, semi-open for me there. It kind of feels maybe too early to think about launching an attack, but I think the obvious way forward at this point in time, especially considering that I'm up in material, would just be to kind of get my knights behind my pawns maybe and just start these pawns charging up the board to open up white's king position. I can't see white having a major attack at this point either, so let's just start with h5. I'm going to want to play g5 I think, but that would need to be defended from the knight first. So I think maybe knight here to e7. No, it doesn't protect that square, it protects this one. Okay, so if knight takes, pawn takes, then that pawn is going to be looking at my knight and my queen. However, I could then exchange off queens. So at this point in time, being a piece up, I think it makes a lot of sense to simplify, because it just amplifies my advantage. Oh, you've done rook takes. Okay, that's interesting. What this says to me is that g4 now looks like quite a tasty square. So it's hitting the rook, and it's also, if the rook moves, hitting h2, and my queen is in line with h2. So if that rook moves, which it should, I'm going to have queen there, king must move to there, I could put queen there, king will have to come out, and then I can swap off queens. So winning a pawn, flushing the king out into the open. That is quite an interesting move. Yeah, I don't know why white didn't capture with the pawn at that point. It looked like it could win material, it pretty much forced the queen exchange. But okay, so that's simply losing material now. If pawn recaptures, I might even think about queen a6, you see, because that comes with check and a discovery from the rook on the queen. But queen to e2 would block that. Okay, you've decided not to go with the recapturing the knight. So the sensible move seems to be knight to c6. Just make sure of my defence. The queen is attacking a7 at this point. If, for example, I go here and queen takes, pawn takes, I lose my knight anyway, but still it's going to be 2 rooks against 1 in the ending. So that should be absolutely fine. What's my most threatening option? That check forces the exchange. But I think knight here is just, it's probably the best move. There's no reason to allow white into my king's private quarters at this point in time. I can also move my king across there. See, if pawn pushes down, I can simply grab with the pawn. So I'm just going to move my king across now. Takes it out of the line of fire of that rook, should that C column ever get cleared. And it just adds a second defender now to this pawn here. Okay, so we've won there by resignation. Okay, let's go back to the beginning of the game and see what the issues were. Standard opening, I am a fan of the London system for beginners. I think that makes an awful lot of sense. I drop my bishop back. It seems like white has studied his London theory to a point, because he knows it's not beneficial to trade off your light square bishop there. With white looking for a dark squared pawn structure, it makes sense to keep the light square bishop on the board. That is his better bishop. This one that's outside in the cold, outside of that pawn pyramid, is kind of an attack piece. It might sacrifice itself in various ways. Again, nice to see the minor pieces coming out. This is all good opening principles. He's castled early, not a bad thing. I bring a bishop out and nearly finishes development. So very, very strong start. That was the major error. Simply undefending the light square bishop. So, and this is quite common. I mean, this is the standard London setup, completely textbook. However, it didn't take into account the threat of that bishop being on that diagonal. And yes, this is a perfectly valid move, but not in this instance, because it's undefending the bishop that has no other defender. So goes a piece down now. It's forced to move the rook, losing a tempo. I then castle. So I've got a piece in my opponent's camp, and I'm already a piece up. So swapping off under these circumstances is not advisable. Advisable. And we have an exchange. Attack the rook. I start to come into his camp, and again, this is another slightly dubious move. I think capturing with a rook there, because it does open up this possibility. I don't think that's particularly easy to spot, because you have to kind of visualize, okay, if the rook moves, then this diagonal is now open. So it's not, I don't really blame white for missing that. However, that move simply drops the rook. So how to beat players in the 700 range, you don't have to do an awful lot. You just have to be better than they are at the absolute fundamentals of making sure you don't leave your pieces undefended. Do not hang pieces. Don't give up material for no reason. And that's more or less it. The 600, 700, 800 level, that's really the main thing that you need to be focusing on. So there you go. Just a short example there. Hope it's been useful for you to help you climb up the rankings. If you're not a subscriber, please hit subscribe and keep up with all the material that I'm producing for different players at various levels. Thank you for watching. See you soon.